It's 7:12 on a Tuesday night. One person is clearing the dinner plates while the other checks something on their phone. Did you renew the homeowner's insurance? Yeah, it went up again. The plumber's coming Thursday. Okay, I moved your mom's cardiology appointment to 3. Great. And are you picking up the prescription Saturday? I can do it after Costco. In less than 2 minutes, they've handled insurance, home repairs, an aging parent, medication, and the weekend schedule. No argument, no confusion, barely even a complete sentence. They've been married for almost 30 years and they are incredibly good at this. Then the kitchen is clean. One of them sits on the couch and turns on the TV. The other opens a laptop, and suddenly there's almost nothing left to say. Nothing is obviously wrong. There's no affair, no screaming, no dramatic resentment hanging in the room. But if you listened carefully, almost everything they said to each other was about keeping their shared life running. And that raises a strange question. How can two people become incredibly skilled at managing a life together, while slowly becoming less practiced at emotionally meeting each other? It's tempting to look at a marriage like this and say, they've become roommates, or the romance died. But that interpretation can miss something important, because sometimes this efficiency isn't evidence that love disappeared. Sometimes it's the very thing that allowed love to survive. Think about what many long-term couples have actually lived through together. Mortgages, layoffs, career changes, raising children, college applications, health insurance, aging parents, funerals, financial scares, broken water heaters, teenagers who need rides at impossible hours, family emergencies that arrive while both people are already exhausted. After decades of this, love may stop looking like candlelight and start looking like someone saying, "Don't worry, I handled it." Reliability can become its own language of affection. Maybe your spouse rarely says, "I'm worried about you." But before your 6-hour drive, they fill the gas tank, check the tires, put water in the cup holder, and make sure your phone charger is in the car. There is emotion in that. It's just been translated into action. For some people, usefulness feels more natural than vulnerability. And this may resonate with some Gen X adults in particular, not because an entire generation is psychologically identical, but because many grew up in environments where independence was admired. You figured things out. You didn't make a big deal out of your feelings. You came home from school, let yourself into the house, made something to eat, and handled more on your own than many children would today. Being capable could become part of your identity, and that capability is a strength. But every strength has a shadow when it becomes the only strategy you trust. If maturity means I can handle it, then saying I need you can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. You might have a terrible day at work, spend hours worrying about losing your job, solve the immediate problem yourself, and only mention it to your spouse 3 days later. Casually. By the way, things got pretty bad at work Monday. Your spouse looks at you. Why didn't you tell me? And you genuinely don't know. Maybe you thought there was nothing they could do. Maybe you didn't want to worry them. Maybe you're so accustomed to bringing people finished problems that you've forgotten how to let someone sit beside you while the problem is still unfinished. Now imagine two people doing this for 25 years. Neither one is abandoning the other. In fact, they may be extremely loyal. But without ever discussing it, they create a kind of emotional contract. I'll take care of my responsibilities. You take care of yours. We'll show up when it matters, and we won't ask too much from each other. That arrangement can feel incredibly stable, especially because practical problems reward you for solving them. The property tax gets paid, the car gets repaired, the college form gets submitted, the retirement account gets reviewed, there's a clear before and after. Problem, action, solution. Emotional problems don't behave like that. You can spend an hour comparing mortgage rates with your spouse and remain perfectly patient. Then one person says, "I don't feel like you want me anymore." And within 5 minutes, both people are defensive. Because there's no spreadsheet for that conversation, no obvious fix, no box to check, no moment when you can confidently say, "Done." Loneliness, insecurity, resentment, grief, fading desire, these problems are messy. And if you've built your identity around competence, emotional uncertainty can feel like unfamiliar territory. So the relationship naturally spends more time where both people feel effective. Logistics, tasks, plans, problems with solutions. Eventually, productivity doesn't just become part of the marriage, it becomes the safest part of the marriage. And this is where things get complicated, because a quiet, practical marriage is not necessarily an emotionally distant one. Some couples genuinely don't need constant verbal reassurance. Their intimacy is quieter. They have private jokes nobody else understands. They know exactly how the other person takes their coffee. One reaches for the other's hand during a difficult medical appointment without saying anything. They sit in comfortable silence. They remember details from 30 years ago. They protect each other's dignity. They can disagree without believing the relationship itself is in danger. That isn't emotional emptiness. That may be security, which is why statements like, "we never fight," can mean two completely different things. For one couple, it means we can disagree without destroying each other. For another, it means we both know which subjects not to touch. From the outside, those marriages can look identical. The difference appears when one person brings something into the relationship that cannot be solved operationally. I'm scared. I feel lonely. I don't know who I am anymore. I miss us. I need more from you. Now, the system has no checklist, and what happens next tells you more about the marriage than who pays the bills or remembers the dentist appointments. Sometimes these questions become impossible to avoid during major life transitions. The kids move out, retirement gets closer, a parent dies. A health scare changes the future. The schedule that consumed 25 years suddenly becomes quieter. A couple who once had endless things to coordinate sits across from each other at dinner. No soccer practice, no school pickup, no college deadline, no urgent repair, nothing to manage. And suddenly the silence feels different, because family responsibilities may have been supporting the relationship, but they may also have been protecting the couple from having to ask a more frightening question. Who are we to each other when there's nothing left to organize? This doesn't mean the marriage was fake. A relationship can contain genuine devotion and emotional avoidance at the same time. You can deeply love someone and still protect yourself from needing them too much. You can think, "I don't want to burden them," and mean it lovingly. But underneath that thought, there may occasionally be another one. "I'm not entirely sure what would happen if I really needed them." That's the distinction worth noticing. Not romance versus practicality. Not emotional people versus unemotional people. But competence that supports intimacy versus competence that replaces it. So maybe the revealing question isn't, do we still go on dates? It might be something quieter. Can you bring your partner a feeling that has no solution? Can you say you're afraid before you've figured out what to do? Can you admit disappointment without immediately turning it into a plan? Can you need comfort without feeling weak, dramatic, or inconvenient? And when your partner does the same, can you resist trying to fix them long enough to simply be there? You don't need to force a 3-hour emotional conversation tonight. Just notice the next time you automatically say, "I'm fine." Ask yourself whether you actually are, or whether fine has simply become shorthand for, "I'll handle it." Because independence and intimacy are not opposites. A mature relationship can contain both. Two people can be capable, responsible, self-sufficient adults and still allow themselves to lean toward each other when life becomes uncertain. So the next time you hear a long-married couple discussing insurance, prescriptions, retirement accounts, repairs, and whose turn it is to call the electrician, don't assume the romance is gone. Listen more carefully. Their efficiency may represent decades of trust. It may represent protection from vulnerability. Most likely it contains some of both. The deeper question is what happens after all the tasks are finished, when there is nothing left to fix, schedule, pay for, pick up, or manage. Can they still reach for each other? And if every responsibility disappeared tomorrow, what kind of connection would remain? If this made you think about your marriage or your parents' marriage, Tell me in the comments. And subscribe if you want to keep looking beneath the ordinary behaviors that quietly shape who we become.